The Hacker News Network presents HNN Cast with your host, Space Rogue.
HNN Cast is sponsored by Astaro, simplifying security, and by TrustWave Spider Labs, providing advanced information security services to planet Earth. Become a sponsor. Email sales@hackernews.com.
This is Space Rogue for the Hacker News Network, and this is HNN Cast for the third week of March 2011. We have big stories on the RSA, PHP, and celebrity breaches, plus follow-ups to several other stories, including the porn that was shown on Jumbotrons in Moscow, which wasn't a hoax. But first, we want to tell you about Comodo and their SSL certs. Thanks to some research by I.O. Error, aka Jacob Applebaum, it was recently discovered that Comodo, an authorized SSL cert provider, had been breached and had some fake certs issued. They tried to quietly recall the certs, but Applebaum's sharp eye noticed the discrepancy, forcing Comodo to lay its cards on the table. In a statement by the company's CEO, Comodo admitted that it had been breached and that fake certificates for Google, Yahoo, Skype, Mozilla, and others had been issued. Comodo said that they were able to trace the IP addresses back to Iran. I don't know. I route all my nefarious activities through Iran. Don't you? Although Iran has been making a lot of noise recently about cyber warfare, understandable as they are still suffering from the lingering effects of Stuxnet, officials for the country have said that they will mobilize a powerful cyber army to repel enemy cyber attacks. It is possible that the Comodo breach was part of those attacks, or not. And while Comodo initially tried to keep the whole thing quiet, once it was brought to light, they have been very forthcoming. Unlike RSA, the recently purchased security division of EMC, which issued an urgent message last week to customers that its systems were hit by an extremely sophisticated cyber attack, and then said nothing else. But by reading between the lines and what they have said, it is reasonable to assume that RSA has indeed lost control over some or all of its secret key mapping database, which would match key fob serial numbers to the 64-bit secret key. As a result, any company that is using Secure ID tokens should assume that they are all compromised and demand that they all be replaced immediately. Unless RSA has more to say about what the hell happened, that is the only reasonable course of action. Failure of RSA to adequately inform its customers of the severity of this breach is negligence at best and downright malice at worst. So, RSA, what the hell happened? The folks over at PHP.net have disclosed a rather major breach of their systems. The server wiki.php.net was compromised and attackers were able to collect wiki account details. The PHP.net guys have done an extensive code audit and examined every commit since 5.3.5 to ensure that no stolen accounts were used to inject anything malicious. They wiped the affected machine and have forced password resets. They suspect the attack was possible due to weakness in the wiki software and a Linux root exploit. Don't think this is such a big deal? PHP is used on over 25 million sites and over a third of the top 1 million. That's a lot of potential victims. I gotta say, comparing the information released on the PHP.net compromise and the RSA compromise, it's like night and day. So who remembers Operation B49? Bingo! Part of Microsoft's Digital Crimes Unit, which was instrumental in taking down the Waldeck botnet. Well, they're at it again with Operation B107, which in cooperation with U.S. Marshals led a dragnet of raids on numerous ISPs suspected of hosting command and control servers for the Rustock botnet. The internet hosting facilities were located in Kansas City, Scranton, Denver, Dallas, Chicago, Seattle, and elsewhere. Microsoft officials brought with them a federal court order granting them permission to seize computers within the facilities alleged to be in charge of the botnet. The Rustock botnet is estimated to contain over 1 million zombie machines. Here's hoping they got it all and that the zombies won't be able to find a new way to phone home. We'll be right back with more HNN Cast right after these messages.
Hi, I'm Nick Farr from Unallocated Space.
Hey, I'm Dave Marcus from Unallocated Space, and you're watching Hacker News Network.
He's good. Awesome. Welcome back to H&N Cast. Some of you may remember before our little break that Anonymous and the Westboro Baptist Church were going at it pretty heavily back and forth. While the two parties eventually simmered down and went their own ways, the Jester has not. You'll remember the Jester and his attack tool he calls Xerxes would primarily DOS, that's DOS with 1D, terrorist recruiting and Planus websites. Well, for the last few weeks, he's been pointing Xerxes at numerous domains owned by the Westboro Baptist Church, and has kept them offline for over a month. The WBC hasn't said why their websites have been down, and the Jester is claiming credit. Of course, it's hard to verify anything with the Jester, but if this is true, this easily has to be the record for the longest denial of service attack. Google has had to tighten up the security of its Android market and the OS just a little bit. After over 50 rogue applications were discovered in the Android marketplace, Google not only removed the apps from the market, but also reached out and touched 260,000 Android phones with the applications installed and removed them. They also pushed out a small security application to patch phones against similar attacks. None of this was done with user consent. Of course, Google's security app was quickly Trojaned and uploaded to other Android stores. You know, I don't want to hear how much better Android is over iOS or even Kindle, when all three platforms can wipe apps off your device without your consent, even if it is for your own good. Of course, when a simple cross-site scripting flaw in the Android Marketplace website allows anyone to upload a malicious app, well, I'll stay with my dumb, appless, anonymous, prepaid cell phone. Thank you very much. While Anonymous did hit Broadcast Music Inc. with a DDoS attack recently, they didn't take credit for all the DDoS attacks that have been happening. South Korea put all of its government web properties on alert after 40 sites within the country suffered from a DDoS attack, which they of course blamed on the North Koreans. Dutch anti-piracy organization Breen had its website shut down for over a week after it was hit with a similar attack, and WordPress.org, which hosts over 17 million blogs, also suffered from a very large DDoS attack that affected all three of WordPress's US-based data centers. And AA419.org, which is an anti-419 scam site,
I go chop your dollar. I go take your money, disappear. 419 is just a game. You are the loser. I am the winner.
was inaccessible for a few days as it too suffered a powerful DDoS attack. And here's a little bit of news from the Wayback Machine.
The Wayback Machine, my incomparable invention for traveling through time, has been set.
Notorious Apple II cracker, the Saltine, perhaps best known for his single-disc crack of Prince of Persia, has donated his entire disc collection, some 140 5¼ discs, to Mac GUI Vault to be archived. The Mac GUI Vault is a sorted, searchable, comprehensive archive of retro Apple II and Macintosh computing material. Now, the Apple II world has access to over 170 disk sides of source code, disk copiers, crack boots, 18-sector disks, and other cracking utilities from the 1980s. That's it for big news. We'll have the quickies later, but first it's tool time. We'll be back with tool time and the H&N quickies right after these messages.
Does everybody know what time it is? Tool time! That's right, BIM4Tools is proud to present
Space Rogue.
That's right, it's tool time again. It's been 3 weeks, so sit tight for a slightly extended tool time. As always, we'll start with the updates. PacketFence is now at 2.1.0. winAUTOPWN is now at 2.6. SAMHAIN is now at 2.8.3-A. Dash. JBROFuzz is at 2.5. Arachni framework is now at 0.2.2.2. Fiddler is now at 2.3.2.4. Burpsuite is up to 1.4 beta. Skipfish is at version 1.85 beta. And Yara is now at version 1.5. Phew, that's a lot of updates. Go get downloading. But remember, check your sources. Also, THICKNET from Spider Labs, an H&N sponsor, was recently busted due to changes with Oracle, and now has been unbusted. And now, into the fresh. First, we'll start with a new tool. That's not new, but it's new to us and may have found a new use. JHAT, Oracle's Java heap analysis tool, can analyze heap dumps from their HPROF profiling tool or from Android SDK's DDMS. KnackTrack R6 is a pen tester Ubuntu distro. Unlike Backtrack, KnackTrack is based on the GNOME desktop. MOSCRACK is a Perl application designed to facilitate cracking WPA keys in parallel on a group of computers. It's used with MOSIX clustering software and SSH nodes. A word list is read in centrally and farmed out to the participating nodes, which can report back centrally. Creepy is the geolocation information aggregator. It gathers geolocation-related information about users from social networking platforms and image hosting services, and then maps the data points with links back to each. Creepy indeed. Okay, how about some hardware? AMSAT's UK's FUNcube radio dongle is the ground segment of the larger FUNcube satellite project. It's basically a USB radio receiver designed for use with Rocky, Mach-GK, SpectraView, and LinRad. It also works with Windows XP, Vista, and 7. It covers from 64 to 1700 MHz and is all mode for AM, FM, single sideband, and TV sound. Get it from cubedongle.com. On a closing note, MoonSols utility page is full of memory and debugging tools and scripts, including LiveCloud KD, the VM debugger. Cool stuff. Be sure to check it out. That's it for this week's Tool Time. Join us next week for our salute to Tool Time. And now for a few quick stories we found on the net this week. But before we hit the quickies, some celebrity news. This story hits over 50 celebrities, including Jessica Alba, Christina Aguilera, Renee Olstead, Scarlett Johansson, Vanessa Hudgens, among others. A few months ago, we told you about a case in Germany where several people had been arrested after successfully infecting celebrities' computers with malware in order to steal unreleased musical tracks and other information from their machines. While we don't know for sure, we suspect that a case involving as many as 50 celebrities and break-ins on their mobile phones may be related. Technical details are a little scarce, and it may just be email accounts and not phones specifically that were breached, with the target this time being nude or otherwise compromising photos. The FBI has confirmed that they are investigating, but has refused to comment further. At least one blogger based in Paris, who uses the handle Deep at Sea, has said he is ready to meet with the FBI if needed, but that he has nothing to do with the attack, which makes you wonder why he deleted his blog. Microsoft has launched a campaign to finally get rid of the bug-ridden cesspool that is Internet Explorer 6. And while this is a good thing, remember that only about 12% of the world still uses IE6, and most of them are in China. The real push here is an excuse for Microsoft to advertise IE9, which just so happens to have just been released. But hey, if it gets rid of IE6, I'm all for it. Silverpop is still popping. Walgreens, McDonald's, and 100 other companies hosted their customer email databases at the mass email provider. Valid email addresses for several tens of millions of the people. You can now add Play.com to the list of companies who have been popped. The VendorSec mailing list, a private invite-only list for Linux vendors to discuss open and unpatched vulnerabilities, was recently found to be compromised. In retaliation for being discovered, the attacker trashed the box, destroying the list. While the list was invite-only, it is extremely likely that the list was pwned a long time ago. In case you haven't been keeping track, NIST has announced the 5 finalists for the Secure Hash Logarithm Competition, or SHA-3. The public competition started back in November of 2007 with 64 entries, and has been narrowed down to just 5 finalists: Blake, Grossel, JH, Kekak, and Skeen. The admin for Ghostmarket.net, the prolific cybercrime online forum which boasted over 8,000 members, was recently sentenced to 5 years in jail after police found thousands of credit card numbers on his computer. 3 other people were previously convicted and sentenced in the connection with the case. You know, it amazes me that 25 years after the movie War Games, and schools still don't secure their systems. Well, okay, it doesn't really amaze me. A former student at Pahrump Valley High School in Nevada has been arrested and charged with not only changing his own grades, but also changing several of his classmates' grades for a fee. He bumped his own grades up so high he graduated as salutatorian, or the second highest in the school. If you're cheating, why not go for number 1? If you have a website hosted at InterWACK, you should probably change your passwords. They had their entire support desk database breached, exposing user login credentials. The small town of Walnut Township in Ohio recently discovered that their payroll records had been breached. The incident was evidently detected during the attack. Personal information of at least 80 people is at risk. Police are investigating. Oh, if you saw that video that was floating around of some guy who supposedly hacked the Jumbotrons in Times Square, don't believe it. All fake. Nothing more than a marketing stunt for some lame movie. The sad part is more people will probably watch that and believe the viral video that perpetuates the hacker stereotypes than will watch the movie that it promotes. There was, however, a hack, if you will, of some large advertising screens in Moscow back in January of 2010. We told you about it then. Unlike the New York Times Square hoax, this one was real. Authorities were able to apprehend Igor Blinikov and have recently sentenced him to 6 years in jail for the stunt. And then there's Lady Ada, aka Lemore Freed, who has made the cover of April's edition of Wired magazine. It's nice to see some of the old school folks make it big, especially when they don't compromise anything to get there. And that's all the quick stories we found on the net this week. That means it's time for your
Kung Fu is sponsored by Source Conference, a global security, technology, and business forum.
Before we get to the con news, just a note to all of our Japanese viewers. We are thinking of you. After the recent earthquake and subsequent tsunami, the Tokyo hackerspace, which was only lightly damaged during the disaster, is hoping to provide 150 solar-powered LED lanterns and even build some Geiger counters for local community use. If you want to help, you can stop by their space and help with soldering, or just donate some cash. They have a link on their site, and the proceeds will go directly to help buy the parts they need. Of course, the big con recently was CanSec West and the pwned competition. Instead of covering it all again here, you should watch the H&N's Behind the Firewall, episode 13. The H&N cameras were at CanSec West, and we have a whole episode devoted to all the juicy details for you. But we will say that we hope Tipping Point re-examines the rules for pwned, a once-a-year secretly developed single exploit exchanged for a substantial amount of money, does not really further the field of security at all. It just gets tons of unusually inaccurate press. Safari was not popped in 5 seconds, no matter what you read on the web. OWASP AppSec USA 2011 will be hosted in Minneapolis, Minnesota on September 20th to the 23rd. AppSec USA brings together top security researchers, practitioners, developers, and pundits for an application security training, talks, a capture the flag, and even a vendor showroom. The call for papers is open, and they are looking for talks on cloud, mobile, and new attack and defense vectors. HackLoo 2011 in Luxembourg in September has opened its call for papers. If you're thinking of heading over to Nauticon this year in Ohio next month, you might want to think about volunteering. They could use the help. They're also going to have some pretty cool-ass badges this year. That alone might be worth the trip. The Chaos Communications Camp is a go this year in August in a field somewhere just outside Berlin. Source Boston is coming up in a few weeks, and immediately following it will be BCon, which will be the inaugural event by the Mass Hackers Group. The con is extremely limited, and they are already half full. If you're looking to attend or present, we have the link at hackernews.com. CarolinaCon is back. The 7th edition will be held at the end of April in Raleigh, North Carolina. The speaker lineup looks pretty good and worth checking out if you're in the area. And if you plan on taking the Hack Bus from San Francisco to DEF CON, they're looking for riders and donations now. You can find them at hackbus.net. So if you've been keeping count, there have been around 20 B-Sides events so far. There are 10 more coming up this year, and at least another 10 in the planning stages. And to think that this whole phenomenon is less than 2 years old. In B-Sides news, B-Sides Austin was declared a huge success. B-Sides Chicago has picked a logo. B-Sides Detroit has picked a venue, the Renaissance Center. B-Sides LA has opened registration, but they only have 200 spots, so register now. B-Sides London has released its schedule. Planning has begun on B-Sides Vienna, which will happen in June. And the big one, B-Sides Las Vegas, has opened its call for papers. And now for the Stack of Shame, the list of all known open vulnerabilities as cataloged by the Zero Day Initiative.
Welcome to the real world.
That's it for this week's H&N Cast. I've been your host, Space Rogue, and you've been watching the Hacker News Network. Remember, if you have any news you think we should report, send it to news@hackernews.com. You have been watching H&N Cast. This is Space Rogue for the Hacker News Network.
Funny do bad things.